It's Writer's Dream Time again. This is a show where we interview authors. We would interview them about writing, about publishing, and about marketing. You can find The Writer's Dream on YouTube. You can find us on Facebook. If you would like to be on The Writer's Dream or you have a question for us, please address it to The Writer's Dream Facebook in the message department, and I will attempt to get back to you. Our guest today is Joseph Satriano. Joseph Satriano is the author of In Sickness and in Health. He is also the trustee of the Susan Satriano Foundation. He's a good friend of mine, a repeat offender on this show. And he is the winner of a few awards because of his endeavors, which we will talk about in a minute. He won the Nassau BOCES Partnership in Education Award. He won the Person of the Year for the Oceanside Herald. And he was the Everyday Hero for the American Federation of Teachers. So, Joe, tell us about why you wrote this book.
Well, first of all, let me thank you for having me on a second time.
My pleasure.
Maybe I'll get it right this time. And thank you for LTV.
Then we'll have to have you on a third time if you don't get it right.
3 strikes and I'm out.
Maybe not.
Yeah, I wrote the book truly, and I should backtrack and tell you that I'm really not an author, even though I am an author.
Neither am I.
Well, there you go. So we have so much in common.
Pseudo-authors we are, right?
That's exactly what it is. I am really a high school math teacher by trade. Do not hold that against me. And my wife Susan was a math teacher as well. And what do 2 high school math teachers do? We actually multiply twice in our lives. Please, audience, hold the laughter down.
This is a family show. Be careful.
And we have 2 beautiful boys who, by the way, were born on the same day, 5 years apart. We also did a lot of calculating. But the reason why this whole thing started with the book and my foundation, the Susan Satriano Foundation, was really because 16 years into our 29-year marriage, Sue contracted breast cancer, and 13 years after she did pass away. And after she died, Joe here, and by the way, I had retired 4 years early to be with her because her health had taken such a bad turn. I was no longer being the fun math teacher I used to be. 2 words that don't go together in the same sentence, fun and math. But so Joe here had no direction, no purpose, no job, no Sue. I was literally going nowhere fast, spending my days and nights in fetal position under my covers in our bed and really doing nothing for anybody. And then I had an epiphany. It was like a lightning bolt hit my head, and I realized that, you know, I still had something left in the tank to help kids, and I needed direction and purpose and hope myself. So I started the Susan Satriano Foundation, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, and then 6 months after, I actually wrote a book, which amazed me because, like I said before, I'm really a math teacher by trade. The book actually was an idea that 4 people at Sue's wake gave me a journal, and they said, "Start writing, Joe. This is good for you." And that was the last thing on my mind to do at that time. But I guess it was somewhere in the back of my head about a year after Sue died when I went into Command Central, which is my computer room at home, and I just wrote the words, "The Beginning." And it was amazing how it flowed like crazy. The words were coming out, and it was just an amazing venture to do. Now, mind you, this was originally going to be a journal for me, and I was not thinking in terms of having it a book, become a book. But here's the weird situation. I went to Sue's breast surgeon.
Dr. Mora.
Dr. Mora. Now, you know her.
And we intimately.
Yes. And we.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, I know. She is very competent, a wonderful woman who, she's great. You know, very much focused in the box. You know, not too much emotion shown because I guess, you know, when you're dealing with breast surgeries all for 8 hours, you know, you kind of get a little immune to everything. But I don't know why I did this, but I gave her a few, quote, chapters. They weren't chapters at the time. They were just things I had written down. And I gave it to her, and I said, would you mind reading this? And after doing 8 hours of breast surgeries at Winthrop Hospital, she called me into her office. It was about 9 o'clock at night. She was behind her desk. I was in front of it. And you could see she read this because she had underlined things. And she started talking about certain things that I wrote. And then she got to one particular point, and she started crying. And at that point, I said to myself, wow, if I can affect someone like her, I bet you I could affect other people in this world too. And that's exactly the moment that it became a book. And then I had purpose to do it. And I got to tell you, it was really funny too, because I know you've asked me only one question, and
That's all right.
taking off like crazy here, but you know, I started to do the things I think like an author does, and maybe they do, maybe they don't. I would put Post-its up all around my house, and I always carried a pencil with me. And I would write down thoughts so I didn't have to write on the walls. I had Post-its there instead, and I would write down little things, and then eventually I would cull them all together, bring them into Command Central, and put them into a chapter. So it was kind of cool that I was able. Now, my cleaning lady did not appreciate that.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
you know, that's an organizational skill that probably runs parallel to your math skills. But I think that when you lose somebody who you really love, you want to talk constantly about them to, you know, to anybody who will listen. Most people I know who really suffering from a loss of a person will go into therapy, and they'll go to bereavement groups and their best friends, and after a while nobody wants to listen to you anymore because you've just used up whatever sympathy they have. And so the best way is through a journal, and you write about it. I've tried that actually, but it's not really worked for me. Because I reread it, and then I think it's really not, I can't capture it. I can't capture it. And you obviously captured it because you've done it differently. Talk about what the book tells people, really.
Well, it's a message. It's not
a sad story.
It is not. I mean, people have told me who come to my book talks that it's like watching a MASH episode on TV. You know, MASH could make you laugh and cry in the same scene. The fact is that Sue and I lived our life to the fullest, despite the fact that cancer was the underlying theme. We did so many fun things in our life, pre-cancer, during cancer. We didn't let it stop us. But then again, we were able to do that. And I understand for other cancer patients, it's so debilitating that they can't live that way. We were fortunate that Sue was 40 years old when she was diagnosed. She had a strong heart. She was able to take a 9-month treatment of chemotherapy. She was cancer-free for 6 years, and then it came back. I wrote a chapter in the book called The 5-Year Myth, because if you talk and look at any website on a cancer website, they will tell you that if you make it through 5 years, you can consider yourself cancer-free. Well, in Sue's case, it was 6. And I didn't write it to scare people. I really wrote it merely to tell people our story, and also to tell people to be vigilant. Do not let the guard down. Because once that clock strikes and you hit 5 years, you think, wow, we can just party.
For me, it was 14.
Wow. So you know what this is all about, Linda. You absolutely know. So the book is a book truly about hope and optimism and love. And because that's the way Sue and I lived our lives, pre-cancer, during cancer. We did not let it stop us. And that's what people tell me they get out of it. Actually, I've been told by people that after reading it, that they actually are able to move forward in their life because they want to emulate the way Sue and I handled it. And I'm telling them that we weren't looking to be role models. We were just trying to get through the day.
Sure.
but apparently it worked for people. Um, I could describe some funny things that we did, which was amazing. And this was during her cancer treatments, and how Sue was such a trooper. And, she truly was a role model for a lot of people, but she never considered herself that. She was just doing what the doctor said to do. But the strength and the courage and her fortitude that she showed during this battle, people tell me now, still to this day, how they were so moved by how she handled this. So, I give Sue a lot of credit for a lot of things, including making me into what I am today.
Well, she was a role model for you, and it enabled you to start the foundation. Talk about, how do you start a foundation?
Yeah, well, the amazing thing was that, like I said, 6 months after Sue died, I finally got this epiphany, and I wanted to help, but I was no longer teaching. But I knew, I saw the devastating effects it had on our own two boys to watch their mom's 13-year demise. So I knew exactly who I wanted to target. And I also thought back to the time that I was a teacher, how these kids who are dealing with a parent who either has cancer or lost a parent to cancer, how they get lost in the sauce. No one ever thinks about them. There's no energy for them at all.
Right. Did you ever read that quote from Chaim Ganat about how teachers create the weather in the classroom, the climate in the classroom, and how we have this incredible ability to make changes in people's lives? I think being a teacher, it brings that out in you, and certainly did with you with the foundation.
Well, it's true that, and the funny thing about it is, if you go into the profession, the kids at that point won't tell you. But you get these letters from them 10 years later or 15 years later saying, I went into the profession because of you. You inspired me. I love the way you taught. It's just amazing. You don't go in for the accolades, but when it happens, it makes you year. So those students out there who had me, write to me, please. Tell me how I affected you positively only.
Don't want to hear about the negatives. But so then you created the foundation, and I've never asked you this question before. We've talked about this so many times. What was the first school that you went to? Describe the process of getting in touch with the school and picking the kids.
Well, it was a no-brainer for me. I live in Oceanside, so I went to Oceanside High School and told them of this idea. And I had 3 requirements that I simply asked. Number one, for the kids that is. Number one, they had to be a graduating senior. Number 2, they had to be going to an accredited college in the fall because it was going to be a scholarship for their higher education.
Right.
The kicker is that they have to have a parent who has either passed away of cancer, presently battling, or in remission. Initially, the school district was a little hesitant about it because when you think about it, it was their first award ever that dealt with not how your academics are,
or your sports,
or how well you can throw a football, or how well you can blow your tuba.
Sorry.
Which is true.
You're seeing the serious side of Joe right now, but Joe and I really, we have a lot of laughs together.
Yeah, like blowing your tuba is a funny thing. But yeah, but so it deals.
Let's move on.
Yes, please, quickly. No, it deals with the health of a parent. So, and there are HIPAA laws which talk about privacy and this and that. But eventually, I got it through that the individual case of a kid would not be mentioned at an awards assembly. Obviously, there would be an inference because I take 2 minutes of everybody's time at the awards assembly and mention what the foundation does and who it helps, and then I call up a name.
Well, do you have like a disclaimer that they sign? Yeah.
Yes, there are disclaimers which say that I'm okay with it. The kids that and the parent or parents that sign that they don't want their. But I'll tell you the truth. The ones that are going to sign that probably wouldn't apply for the award either. Because they kind of know what they're getting into.
Right.
And so not only do I attend every single award assembly that I can get to, and some nights, I'm telling you, I am helping every gas station in Nassau County because I am running from Islip to North Valley Stream to to Oceanside to you name it. But I enjoy it. I'm not complaining. I'm just mentioning that, you know, you're looking at the foundation, basically. No one works for me. And that's also the reason why 100% of what I take in goes right out to kids.
You have no overhead.
Correct. You
Or you don't charge for anything.
correct. And any time there is an expense, because I run concerts, for example, if there's an expense deals with that, and that money that we make goes to the foundation, it'll come out of my pocket. So this way I can look at people and right in the eye and say 100% of what I take in goes out to these kids. You will never get an address label from the Susan Satriano Foundation. You'll never get a calendar. That's taking the money and bringing it to somewhere that it wasn't intended for. So, and I'm very proud to say also that that over 10 years, I've done it for 10 years now. I'm starting my 11th academic year. Sue passed away in 2005. 6 months later, in 2006, I gave out my first awards at Oceanside High School. By the way,
it really didn't take you all that long to get moving in a really positive direction. How many schools would you say or how many students? I think you know that better. How many students have you helped?
well, I could answer both questions. I've helped over 900 kids.
Wow.
And I've given out, and I'm very proud of this number, I've given out over $500,000 in scholarships at this point.
All righty.
Yeah, and in terms of schools, I help over 50 districts on Long Island and the tri-state area, and I also help districts across the nation as well. Jersey and Pennsylvania. I actually drive to a couple school districts in Pennsylvania because they're kind of close enough, and it's a wonderful experience to be there, see the kids. By the way, the other thing I didn't mention is that not only is this a check and I'll never see you again, but I go to every single school and I talk to the kids. So I have met over 900 kids in 10 years. And basically what I do is I tell them my story, and the amazing thing is that they open up like crazy to a stranger because we've walked the walk. And I don't make it threatening in any way, shape, or form. The kids that don't want to say anything, I do the talking. You know, the kids that want to say something. And by the way, amazing children who do incredible things based on what they've seen at home. I can't tell you how many of these 900 kids go into professions like pre-med or physical therapy or psychology because they're so impressed with how the professionals helped their parent or parents get through the illness. They want to give back. And I have stories that I can just, I'm on a show called the Halftime Howie program every week on Sundays. I do a segment called Inspiring Stories. And basically, I have 900 stories I could tell the audience about how inspiring these kids are, how they have taken what they've been given. They didn't ask for it, but they don't sit back. They make a dent. They raise money. I had this one kid, amazing. He was kind of reticent. Guys are usually a little reticent during the interview